Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this 42nd edition of our webinar series. We are privileged to have another go at ABCD. Today, you remember we've had 2 more sessions previously, and graciously, Janine and Tim are again anchoring this for the 2nd edition of our webinar series. And we are grateful to Janine and Tim, because again, ABCD is one of quite a munching and grounding approaches in community development, and continues to remind us that we can exercise our citizenship based on our gifts, even before we call upon any other duty bearer to come on board to work with us in community development and transformation. My name is Daniel Muya, IACD Trustee for Sub-Saharan Africa. I have the privilege of chairing this session, and we are hosted by Jessica Sinclair, IACD Administrator. And I can see many of our colleagues who have been with us through this journey for very many editions. With us, you are welcome, and thanks for all the support that you have come this far. Okay, in the interest of time, I would wish that we go to the topic of discussion today, which is going to be a panel discussion led by a group of ABCD practitioners, largely based in South Africa. It's a team led by Janine Ward, who is IACD trustee with us in IACD board. And from now onwards, I'm adding over to Janine to steer the process forward. And of course, Janine, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel, and good morning to everybody. I can't believe this is our 42nd webinar. I remember when we started thinking about, should we do this every month, and how are we going to have enough topics? And so I really want to honor Daniel for his leadership in making these things happen, because we are the top region in IACD globally for these regular webinars. And I'm really proud of everything that we've done in these last 42 or 41 sessions. So today is talking about ABCD again. I am a trustee based in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal. And I have done a couple of masterclasses and ABCD webinars before, so you could find those on the IACD YouTube channel. But today I thought we'd do something a little bit different and just think about how does ABCD look, what does ABCD look like on the ground? And I'm delighted to have with me my passionate and fellow ABCD family in South Africa. So I thought we'll just do it as a panel discussion and hear from different ABCD practitioners how they are using ABCD in their context. And then we will have an exciting announcement towards the end of the webinar about the launching of the ABCD Africa Association, which we hope all of you would be interested to join if you are passionate about this particular approach to community development. So just to start with, what is ABCD? Some people say to me, oh, it looks like we're going back to preschool, learning the alphabet again. But it actually is asset-based, citizen-led development. And it is a strength-based approach that focuses on enabling people to identify, harness, and mobilize existing assets, talents, gifts, and strengths and resources. It's a positive response to the needs-based kind of handout welfareist approach that is much more service delivery based. And we don't see the people that we work with as beneficiaries, because that is a very negative term. I've just come from a conference where people were complaining about this word and saying we have to find another word to replace the word beneficiary, because it's like it's a top-down kind of patronizing implication. So we are enabling people to set their own development goals by helping them to look at what is available around them, what they have. And so it fosters a spirit of active citizenry and agency giving power of decision-making to the people and to the community members so that they determine their own development. And there are different ways in which we do this. There's mapping exercises, there are mind shift exercises, which help people to look at the glass half full, which I have here. And what we say basically is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. So that is like the tagline for ABCD, where we encourage people to just look at where they are, look around them and say, what is it that I have available and what can I do with that? So it really is, you know, as simple as that in a way. But let's have a look at the different contexts. So we have 3 different sort of interviews, and I would like to start. I want to introduce my friend Bernie Dolly, who is an ABCD practitioner who's been promoting and living the ABCD philosophy in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa for several decades now. And she works with a non-profit grant-making organization called IACD Trust. And so she's very much living ABCD and working with ABCD on the ground with community members. So welcome, Bernie. It's lovely to have you with us today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with ABCD, and how do you see this approach changing the lives of people that you've come across in your work?
Hi, good morning, Janine. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm not sure where people are coming from. So thank you, Janine, very much. And yes, my name is Bernie Dolly. I'm the founding director of IACD Trust, located in Gqeberha, in Port Elizabeth, the old Port Elizabeth, in the Eastern Cape, South Africa. And so 3 decades is a heck of a lot of information. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple and as easy as I possibly can. So yes, in my own life, have facilitated probably more than 60 of these workshops across different communities, across different sectors, quite involved with different universities and so on. And I had the privilege, and where it all started was having the privilege of meeting Gord Cunningham from the Cody Institute. And that's actually, I want to give credit to them, because had it not been that I had met Gord by accident in the corridors of the University of Fort Hare in the Eastern Cape when I was the chairperson of the Eastern Cape NGO Coalition, I would not be where I am today. Because Gord was able to frame and name what I was talking about. So I was obviously talking the ABCD language, but I didn't know that is what it was. And he said, hey, come on, this sounds like you're doing exactly what we're trying to advocate. And there's a long history. Conrad's got a history with them as well. They were here way before the apartheid era. And many people went across to Canada to the Institute to actually do asset-based training. And so, you know, fast forward that, I had the privilege of going to Canada and spending a couple of weeks there to actually be trained, you know, in ABCD, but also to be able to contribute to their ABCD agenda. And I think very, very importantly, what was different about what IACD was doing, and not just me, but I want to give credit to Nin Elisov, where we've been working together for more than 20 years. We had a very particular agenda, and the agenda was about shifting paradigms. If ABCD does not transform communities and individuals, it is not ABCD. And we believe that emphatically. So I'll fast forward to my own experience and my frustration around ABCD. And this is what I'm concerned about in the world of work right now. So in the country where we are, which we know, the struggles, the unemployment, poverty, and all of that, the issue sits with mindsets. And if you cannot, as an individual, work on the fact that that glass is half empty all the time, it doesn't matter how many workshops you attend, it's going to have no purpose and no meaning. And that's where my frustration is coming from. I'm starting to question this whole notion of community. You know, who is community? And where we've had some success is where there's an individual in a community who becomes the gapper, who is the leader, who actually leader without the title, but the person who actually drives things in that community and is able to attract people to their vision and their aspiration. And be very clear about the role that I play when I come into a community, and that I'm
You're still there, Bernie? We've lost you, frozen. Yeah, I think that is the key thing. As Bernie says, the starting point is the whole issue of the mind shift, because we can have all sorts of excellent fancy mapping exercises and all those types of things, but unless people change how they feel about themselves and how they look at their world, nothing is really going to change in terms of behavior and what happens on the ground. So I think Bernie's work is really, really critical. Because as she says, they spend a lot of time on the mind shift and on the conscientization, getting people to believe that they have options, they have a possibility of moving forward despite certain challenging conditions. Sadi, I wonder if you would like to come in at this point and just comment on what you've heard from Bernie and whether you're finding the same issues on the ground with the training you're doing.
Thank you very much, Janine. Yes, very much so. The question of community, who is community? Community starts with me. Community starts with an individual. And what we have seen working for us, it's actually using idioms and metaphors as frameworks, you know, to reignite and to make this thing relatable and easier for people to understand. For example, you know, when we talk about kgamelo e dutlang, you know, when you say go kgamela mo kgamelong e dutlang in Setswana, in English it means milking in a leaking bucket. So it helps us because the leaky bucket has got there's resonance with the metaphors that are used. So using metaphors brings it home, and people then it actually reignites the passion for self-development, because you know people have you know for some reason forgotten where they come from, that they've got power in themselves, that they can do and change their own situation. But when you use something that they can relate to, and it actually reignites that passion for self-development. So you know, that actually works very much for us to try and bring the understanding of citizen-led development home for people to understand it in their own contexts. Yeah.
No, that's lovely. Thank you. And I think if I think of one of the quotes that I saw yesterday at this other conference I attended, a lovely picture of a huge one of these beautiful big baobab trees that we have here in Southern Africa. And the quote says, "One person cannot hug a baobab tree, but together, if you all hold hands, we can stand around that tree and hug the tree." And it's exactly what you're saying, Sadi. Yeah, excellent. Well, maybe in the interest of time, until we get Bernie sorted out, let me maybe move on to the next panelists, and we can come back to Bernie. The other two people that I would like to introduce you to are Hannah Nell, who is a professor in the social work department at the University of Johannesburg. Welcome, Hannah. And she's also been working in the academic field for about 3 decades and doing a lot of research on the ground in terms of ABCD. And alongside her is our colleague Conrad, who is working in the government sphere. He is the Deputy Director of Public Participation in the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. And Conrad and Hannah have done some exciting work on the ground in terms of ABCD. Hi, Conrad. And also we've been doing some training. I was also involved in some of the training at the university, taking government employees through the ABCD certificate, which has been exciting. So perhaps to start with you, Hannah, why are you so passionate about ABCD, and how do you see its effect and its benefit in the communities that you've worked with? Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you, Janine, for the opportunity to share my views and also my feelings and my passion about ABCD. Yes, I've been involved with ABCD, as you've said, Janine, for 3 decades now, or maybe longer. But, you know, in the beginning, I was always teaching community development. And many years back, I've started with the problem-based approach. You know, you go to the community, you ask them, what do you need? What are your problems? And then for sure, they drew up a long list of what they don't have and what they need and all their problems. And at the end of these sessions, they were so devastated and so negative and so, you know, we couldn't really move with them forward, you know, because they have all these problems. And then for sure, they become dependent. They have this notion in their minds that I can't do anything for myself. Oh, here are government coming, here are the external help coming. They will provide, they will give, you know. And this makes people so dependent, you know, and they lose their self-confidence. They you know, they couldn't move forward except for, you know, getting some handouts, getting some programs, getting some things from outside. So it was a very top-down approach. And then, you know, I was also introduced to IBCD in America. It wasn't the Cody Institute. And after that, you know, Cody Institute from Canada came to South Africa. And then, you know, the hoha bite me, with me there, you know. So I've started to change my mindset about it. And I've just started realizing how powerful this approach actually is, you know, by going to the community, asking them, what makes you tick every day? What makes you get out of bed today, this morning? You know, start with simple questions, because many of these people, you know, we are working with very, very poor people. Okay, Conrad, this is not your word, the poverty one, you know, people. And Sadi also say, no, nobody's poor, you know, because everybody has assets. They have something to offer. But in any case, we work with very devastated people. And then the moment we start focusing on what make them kick, what got them out of bed this morning, you know, what did they do, what are they doing every day, you know, and then a person will say, I'm looking after 5 children during the day, and this is my passion, I love it. And by really exploring, discover what they have, what the relationships are all about in the community, because there are very strong relationships, and there are physical resources, there are natural resources. They don't even see this wonderful mountains and the river flowing through this community. By making them aware of that, they start changing their mindsets, as Bernie has also say, and Janine also say, and Sadi, you know, changes must take place in your head. And then combined with other people's assets and what they have and what makes them kick every day. You know, they start using their assets, and they start realizing that outside help is not the solution. Let's build on what we have. Let's use what we have. And we thrive towards a better future by not being dependent on government. But through my involvement with Conrad, with government, we had a wonderful project. Sadi was also involved. I'll see Johanna Kaikalami is also here. We had a wonderful project sponsored by Swedish company, and then we also work with government and communities, and we really use participatory action research, you know, getting people from the community and government on board, working together on plans for the community. But there were many challenges, but wonderful results as well. But I can just show, I don't, Conrad can go into it in more depth, but what I realize, or what I discovered through research, is that there are 4 factors, 4 elements that are very, very important, you know, and we had a comparison study between problem-based communities and asset-based communities, ABCD communities. And the difference are very clear, you know, and there were 4 levels of factors that we identified, which are relevant for all community development projects, but the one is system changes, you know, systems should change, and it means on a personal basis, on an organizational basis, and a community basis, should systems change, you know, meaning, as we've said, we personally, we have to change our mind shift towards, I can't do anything, I'm poor, I've only got grade 6, towards I can do something with my life, and as a group we can really thrive. So there must be changes taking place on a personal basis, but also on an organization basis. You know, if you come in as an organization, you can't approach a community through a problem-based approach. It won't work. You can't teach people on community level ABCD, but in your organization, it doesn't work like it. You are still problem-based. So, you know, change must take place there as well. We must form partnerships. As you know, I think we talk about learning partners with our community members. We must work out plans from the start, from the initiating of projects. You can't come in when the plans are already done and then we propose it to the community and we discuss it with them. That won't work. So we have to involve the community from the start, from, you know, exploring what they have and what they can offer and what they have already busy doing in the community. Now, so the organization should also change their minds and the way they are functioning from problem-based towards asset-based. And then, and we also saw in the ABCD communities on community level, there is a ripple effect, meaning, you know, people don't keep these small projects for themselves, you know, functioning here in solos, you know, on their own, you know, planting a vegetable garden, but they don't share with the bigger community. You know, it has a ripple effect towards the whole community. This is how ABCD works. And we see it on ground level, you know, where they start sharing resources, where they start sharing all kinds of assets in the community, where they start realizing, but we can't work on our own. We have to collaborate with the bigger community. So this then on systems changes should place on 3 levels. Then we also realize or identify that participation is a core in community development per se, whether you do problem-based or ABCD. But the difference in ABCD is that participation is a big word. And there are different levels of participation. And we can't say, oh, we consult our community, and this we see as participation. This is not participation. Real participation is when you work with the community members on ground level, involve them from the start, you know, doing all these use all these tools and mapping exercises. We have wonderful tools to use to get people involved and committed and enthusiastic about what they have and what they can do. So participation must be done on ground level from the start. And this is, I don't want to go into more depth there. But on sorry, Janine, you must hurry me up. The third one is leadership. You know, it's not that the organization come in as managers and leaders and and have a top-down, you know, empowering people here on ground level. Leaders should be developed on ground level, on community level. It must be citizen-led. It must be, you know, so leadership looks different in ABCD communities than in problem-based communities. And then the third one, participation. The fourth one is actually stakeholders, partnerships, you know. Partnerships is very important. You can't just leave the communities on their own and saying, oh, they must develop themselves and they must carry on and they must use their assets. Partnerships is crucial, but partnerships in ABCD.
Yeah, but it's not so bad.
Partnerships in ABCD looks different than in problem-based communities, you know. They must understand ABCD, the different partners. The community is the main decision maker of their lives, of their projects, of what they want to do. And partnerships from outside, like government, but we also explore Conrad and on government level, there's a specific role for outside external help, you know, but we must talk to the communities about it. Power should be situated in the community. So power is a crucial thing in ABCD. And it's very difficult to really help people to start realizing their power and what they have. You know, they are so used to top-down leadership and power
In a free
from
Wi-Fi.
outside. Hi, Poppy. So partnerships are very important for ABCD, but how you do it and what it should look like is very, very crucial. And I think, Janine, I don't know, I think my time is maybe up.
Thank you. No, that's so
I can go on
insightful.
for hours.
I
but
can
it's
hear you've got so
exciting.
much experience and passion, and the research is showing such valuable lessons. So on that issue of power, I want to turn over to Conrad and say, from a government perspective, I know you've had some struggles in trying to implement ABCD as a strategy, as a way of working in government. And the criticism of government is often it's like a huge ship, you know, it takes many months to turn and go in a different direction. So can you maybe share from your side that how have you managed to implement ABCD from a government point of view where people can feel like we are part of this thing? As Hannah says, that idea of partnership and genuine partners working side by side, not looking to government always to say they're the ones who must bring the money, they must bring the projects and so on. I'm sure there's a lot of tension in your context, and I applaud you for your 7 years or so more of really plugging ABCD in the government sector, because I know we've had conversations where you've been very frustrated. But yeah, well done for being the champion that you are, and please share with us your story from government side.
Thank you, Janine. Hello, everyone. My name is Conrad Jardine. It's good you've got the title wrong there, Janine, but you know you can always call me Msebenzi. It means I'm an ABCD worker. Okay, so yes, I work in government, and it's in the Gauteng province. Gauteng province in a department called Cooperative Governance. I'm there, like I always say, for my sons. I'm there as the director for public participation. And yeah, I always find it difficult to explain to people, what do I do? The test for anything you do is if you can explain it to people what you do, you know, on a daily basis. It's always easy to explain that I'm a motor mechanic, I fix cars. You know, I'm a welder, I weld things together. And Judith is somewhere here. And the one day she told me, okay, now I know what you're doing. You are delivering people. And it just stuck with me immediately. Yes, and I always like to tell colleagues, our work is people. We don't deliver, okay, you're like a midwife, you deliver people, type of thing. But the key there is, how do you create the connections between people? And that is quite powerful. And like they say, you know, as much as there's death in association, there's also power in association. So yeah, I find myself in government. And what is the type of associations that and connections that I need to strike up? So it sounds impossible. And that's what people thought when I started talking ABCD. It sounds very impossible to introduce an ABCD mind frame and thinking and approach in government and through government, and how we sort of facilitate that process. I don't want to say we deliver ABCD, because government is all about delivery. So you need a lot of passion for that. You need that if you work in government and you talk ABCD, and you must be a bit neurologically divergent. So you mustn't think the same same way that everybody's thinking. You must be a bit crazy and go off on a tangent. That's what you must do. So what we did over 7 years ago is one of our biggest challenges was in South Africa. We had lots of protests. We had lots of disengagement. People are very disengaged. And they're not interested in what government has to say or to do, but what they're interested in is government must just deliver, and if it doesn't deliver, we will government will hear about it, and hence the level of protest, and even as a sense of anger. It's like any human interactions. If I deliver on what I'm promising, Janine will get upset with me. And of course, we've got a way of expressing that here quite physically also. Not physically, but yeah, we do express that quite clearly. So the key challenge for us was, how do we start recorrecting this discourse about government delivering and communities engaging? Now, we are very fortunate in South Africa that we've got a very strong constitution that talks about participatory democracy. So the authors of the constitutions and the subsequent legislation from that actually had quite foresight around what needs to be done to sustain a democracy. And that comes from the history of the struggle against apartheid, the involvement, the engagement of people to overcome a system that was thought to be impossible to overcome. And that was quite well written into the Constitution, where it talks about participatory democracy, in the legislation, where it talks about fostering a culture of community participation. Now, we all know you can have a beautiful designed car, but if your mechanics, if your engines, if your wheels are not properly functioning, placed and working, it will be all useless. The Constitution and the legislation will be all useless. So we find courage from the legislation around how do we do it. And the ABCD approach actually, when we started testing it out, within the first week, we said, this is it, we're onto something. Because it really brings together these two what almost opposite type ends. What government has to do in terms of its deliveries and commitments, and what communities are doing on their own. And the key challenge is how do we bring the two together? And the ABCD helps us to do that. How government, through what it delivers, can initiate and invite communities to participate. And what communities initiate and invite outsiders to actually work with them at that space within that communities. We've tested that within communities, and it was also part of the Empoleni research. And it worked quite well. And we could see immediately, it's almost as if the results are instantaneous. I know with a lot of development and projects and programs, we always have to wait for 6 months to a year to see or define the results. But with an asset-based approach, we could see that that results coming up immediately. What we also found was that immediately it started to improve the relationship between government and communities. I mean, we had in one case, in Empoleni, Sadi was at that workshop, where you could see this person was quite anxious and upset with government. And after the session, you could see how she was literally defrosting. Her attitude was defrosting, and she said, okay, this sounds good, let's give it a try, let's go for it. So immediately we see these type of relationships and perceptions evolving into a much more positive mindset. And Bernie and Sari was talking about mindsets, and So 7 years in the making, it's coming to fruition, where we using the asset-based approach to help us frame how as government can engage in a developmental way with communities. It's early days, but the results are very, very positive. So it is possible. So we've sort of like almost like achieved what is considered impossible.
Yeah.
Let me also just conclude there by stating that I'm also joined here by other government colleagues here. So Janine, maybe later on, they would also just share some of their own experience when they heard me talking ABCD for the first time, and they thought like, you're divergent, neurologically divergent. But, and like the previous speaker said, it is a personal mindset, it can create organizational transformation, and it can build relationships.
Yeah.
Between us as officials and communities as community people. So relationship and trust is very, very, very important. Lastly, so what we also tell people is that we build trust, and that's a mouthful. Thank you, Janine.
Yes, thank you so much, Conrad. Yeah, and I think that is the key thing, because it doesn't matter whether we are government or we are community members or we are consultants or we are corporate or whoever. We are people at the beginning, right? We're all just human beings, and it's the connection and the relationships that makes all of that difference, where we sit and take time to just connect and to build trust between ourselves and to talk as one-to-one, as person to person, without titles and fancy things behind us. And that's, I think, where the ABCD magic happens, is that people are just willing to see each other as fellow human beings. So maybe on that note, I can bring Bernie back just very quickly to say, if you are there, are you here with us, Bernie? You're back. There you go.
I am, and
Fantastic.
I am so sorry for what happened, and realized that my colleagues were also on. I invited them onto the conversation, and we can't be three of us on at the same time, because obviously the bandwidth is not enough. But it actually struck me, and I'm maybe in a good way that this happened, because imagine communities we work with, that I work with. And I just had a call from somebody this morning, way dur in the rural Transkei with no connectivity.
Yeah.
And here we are, sophisticated, sitting and talking about them, and they're not in the room.
Yes.
So in hindsight, I'm really glad it happened.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly our struggle and our challenge is how do we bring people into the circle so that they feel that they're driving their own development.
Yes.
And so as much as I was getting frustrated, it also helps when you're older. I'm just like, it's out of my control. I cannot do anything about it. And all of these people in the room will understand. They're all human beings like me, and I actually don't care. So just to maybe conclude from my side, and I go back, I obviously missed quite a bit, but I go back to champions in community that we need to embrace. Find them. They're in every community, and it's not difficult to see. And when you start talking to people, it's like, how did that happen? No, Mrs. So-and-so, she's the champion. She makes that happen. And so if I look at, my big thing at the moment for the Eastern Cape, and I'm going to stop there, was how do you transform small towns that have lost their local economy? And in the Eastern Cape in particular, railroads, railway towns, where there was, jobs were centered around the rail system that no longer exists, and these have become ghost towns. And that's where you have all the violence, all the social ills, drug trafficking happening, crime at a level that nobody understands. And this little town called Hofmeyer, which is about 3 hours away from where I'm based, through Teresa Opperman, is slowly showing us that with a committed group, diverse, bringing people together, embracing the principles of ABCD, making people believe that they own their destiny, that they actually can do it. This kind of can-do attitude. We've watched that town transform, creating jobs, creating a whole tourism hub. And now we're trying to see is how does Teresa, not Ikala, how does Teresa use what has happened to try and influence other smaller towns? And it's happening very slowly. I mean, Conrad is government and the other officials here. I have no patience with the way that our government officials work in this Eastern Cape. Absolutely no patience. I think they intentionally put bureaucracies in place to keep communities out of conversations. And I don't have time. There is no time. And I think that's the other thing, is there needs to be urgency around what we do and agency. You know, and I don't want to be jumping through 6 different hoops to be able to kind of get to an answer, a simple thing like changing a signpost. I don't want to do that, you know. So as Janine was saying in my introduction, I'm privileged to do what I do because ICALA also, as much as we facilitate, we actually work in and with community. So you right there, that trust is built. And like Conrad was saying, trust is so critical and so important. And in South Africa, we don't trust very easily because trust has been broken in so many ways. So how do we use ABCD as a principle, as a philosophy to rebuild trust and rebuild and acknowledge that everyone has something, nobody has nothing, you know, and how do we use that to kind of, you know, for people to realize their aspirations. So thanks, Janine, and apologies
Wonderful.
again.
No, thanks.
For what
Great to have
happened,
you
for the
back.
glitch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Pleasure, pleasure. So now I want to take us into the boardroom. And I would like to introduce you to my former classmate, Amelia, who I met in 2012 when we were doing the Cody Institute training at the through the University of Pretoria. And we were selected as one of the group to be trained as Train the Trainers, where Cody basically said, after people like Sadi and Hannah and Bernie had been to Canada and Conrad, they then said, now we need to put a team of trainers on the ground, and then we're going to leave you guys and let you get on with things. So I met Amelia back in 2012, and we've been doing fairly different work since then. But Amelia is working with Zutari, a large mining engineering company, and she has integrated ABCD in such a funky way into the work that she's doing in communities and so on. So I'd love you to now tell us, Amelia, a little bit about your passion. Where does your passion come from? And how are you able to use ABCD, which is such a community-based thing? How do you get engineers' brains to understand something like this community development process? I find it a fascinating mixture.
They also have hearts, Janine.
Yeah, they do. I'm married to one, so I know they have hearts.
Thanks for the opportunity. Welcome, everybody. I think what's so amazing is this group of passionate people. Janine, you should actually have a chapter for each one of us so that we can present, because we've got so many things and stories that we can tell. So when we look back at 2012, when I started with this training, before that, I went into communities, CSI type of thing, and we got opportunities to work with the mining industry, roads industry, etc. in South Africa. And it was a really top-down approach. We will present the pedestrian safety stuff, or we will do study methods in this school or in this community. And you know what? You need to listen. And then at that stage, it was really that the headmaster came in and he said to this one boy standing in a queue, and I'm just thinking about it now, to say that you are not allowed to stand in this queue, go out. And I said, but why? It's a queue to get food. And this little boy couldn't get food that day. And the headmaster said, Amelia, we got funding for food the previous day and today. Half of the school can get food the previous day, and he already got food that day. So he cannot stand in another row today to get food. And guess what? This little boy was sitting in my study methods course. And I was like oh my word, this snobbish girl from Pretoria, Cape Town, wants to explain to children what study methods are, but this poor child doesn't have food in his stomach. And that made me think it is about really food insecurity, that we need to look at what is happening on the ground. We cannot do a top-down approach. We have to look at how can we do the top-down, but also the bottom-up approach. And it's a change management process that actually starts to work together. And then I went out and I said, I need to find something that we cannot do the top down. And then I discovered the ABCD. And you can just imagine it was an explosion of my body, mind, spirit, blood type, everything and it changed my world tremendously. Because if you are, and I want to warn all the other people, if you buy into the ABCD, you are not going to be released. You don't want to get out of this. This is our movement and this is our family. You cannot get out because it's like all the previous speakers spoke. It is about our passion. It's about appreciative inquiry. It's about making a difference where we are. And yes, was it easy? It was not easy. It's something that is a change management process. And like you said, Janine, when working with the engineers, I'm 13 years now here, and I had previous past lives as well, 10 years in my own company, 10 years in government. And throughout that process, I had to learn how to do the change management. And I think one of the biggest things was to get the engineers in our company to buy into ABCD. But you know what made the difference? It's the qualitative and the quantitative type of data that our clients and our people and communities want to see and hear. It's about our passionate stories. It's about to have the impact by numbers, which is linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, etc. Because if you don't have that, and you can't showcase that, it's the facts, it's hard facts that our engineers wanted. But it's not only the engineers, it's also our funders, our clients. And I think that is when we go out, and my growth took place when I've seen that communities goes to funders or clients and ask, we would like to get some funding for our projects or for the work that we are doing. The people that's saying sitting with a mindset of, I don't have anything, poor us, please help us, compared to a group of people that already did their asset mapping, that already discovered the beautiful skills, knowledge, talents, and networks that they have. They can take their story to funders and they build on that. And I think that is what's so amazing of the ABCD, is that each one teach one. We've got a foundation that we build on, and it's really that thing. And I can't remember which of the speakers, I think all of them mentioned that we start where we are, we build on that, we use what we have and do what we can. And that creates social cohesion, but also improve stakeholder engagement, relationships, and then the trust within the communities as well. So I think the process that we've done within also in the Eastern Cape, in South Africa, Rustenburg area, DRC, Nigeria, and other African countries. We're working in Namibia, Botswana. We're currently working in Kenya, and I've seen that some people are in the Kenya offices as well. It's about working together. No one sitting in this call can do it alone. Whether you are an individual in the NGO field or in government, private sector, whatever, we have to combine our resources and our skills and assets that we've got so that we can take over the world. And it's almost like this ABCD virus. It's infectionate, and I would like more and more people to get the ABCD virus, and we are going to make a huge difference. So that is, I can talk a lot, but I think that is the summary of what I would like to say now. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I think that goes back to that thing that Hannah was saying about the partnership. It's about partnership. It's about the fact that we are all required to be part of the story. And I think that is where, when our passion comes out, that is where it all works. And so that moves us beautifully into our last speaker, which is who's going to give us the exciting news about the fact that exactly because of this, we are all so passionate and we are all heading towards our later years in life. Let me put that politely that way. And so we felt
Speak
like
for yourself, Janine.
we've been given this mandate to say, this is a new opportunity. This is a different way of working in communities. That thing mustn't stop with us, you know. We need to pass this on to the next generation. And so a few of us have been talking for a number of months now and come together and said, what can we do about making sure that this family, which we see growing, and it's marvelous to be able to be now bringing it continentally into Africa, how do we make this thing go forward? So I would love to introduce you to Judith, who is a brand new IACD member, and it's wonderful to have you in this country and joining us as IACD. And I hope that after this call, my other South African colleagues will also be signing up and joining. So Judith is going to share with us the exciting news about this new association that we have put together. We're in the process of putting together. And Jessica, if you can share the slides from your side, then Judith, over to you.
Great. Thank you so very much. Janine, I just wanted to make a contribution, I think,
yeah,
in keeping with the other speakers before I get to the presentation. Is that fine?
Sure. Please
okay,
do.
cool. Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you, meet you, colleagues and friends. So I think just in keeping with the other speakers, just to trace, I think, my own interest and the origins of my relationship with ABCD. The earliest memory I have is Janine and Bernie, is Leslie from Legal Wise, a friend of ours, at an ABCD conference that was held in Port Elizabeth. Bernie, I don't remember the year, but it was in that conference where Leslie spoke to how, as a grant-making corporation, how they worked in very differently with a community and yet achieved the same results. That example stuck with me because after working in the NPO sector for a very long time, the relationship NPOs have with funders is one where NPOs just seek money. We don't ask for anything else. All we want is the money to do the work in communities and for communities. And what Leslie was presenting was an alternative to working with communities. And the example she gave in a nutshell, friends, is where they challenged the community and said, if you want a community hall, we will avail 50% of the funding, or we will match whatever funding you raise as the community. When she said that, I thought the first thing that came to my mind was that the community most likely would not be able to raise their own money. But as she continued with her story, she then said, because the community had decided on what the project would be, they actually found the money. And so as a corporate, they were able to match that funding and bring the community hall to life. So that was a powerful example, I think, of what ABCD can do in communities. And so it was a journey that then began my relationship with ABCD to the point where I then ended up attending an ABCD training that Janine led and facilitated. Then I think the other thing I want to speak to is the fact that I've worked in numerous sectors. So the NPO sector being one, but I've also worked in government and have also had exposure to corporates. And what I found was that we also need to change the mindset as these institutions. And this is the point that Hannah, even when communities change their own mindset, if we are not changing how we are engaging with communities, it's also problematic. And so I often have, many opportunities to put ABCD on the table as a new approach for many of these organizations and institutions. So whether it's an NPO, whether it's a corporation, and whether it's a government entity, it's about itself reflecting on how it's engaging, and I think making the needed changes in order, I think, to cultivate this kind of passion and activism, if one can call it, in communities themselves. Part of what I think was frustrating for me was that many of the NPOs we would work with, we would partner with from communities and community-based organizations, their interaction with us, either as government or as corporations or as grant makers, was only to seek for funding. So they would engage us to ask for money. We need money for this. We need money for that. Would you please, give us money for this and those kinds of things. And that was starting to be frustrating to me because it meant that our relationships were framed around resources and our relationships were very superficial at best. And I'm being very kind. But also that our relationships were very extractive. And so that also led to me getting somewhat agitated because nothing was changing. We were having the same conversations with the same people about the same things, doing things the same way. And so another value for me of ABCD was that it introduced me to how things can be done in a different way. It presented the olive in real ways. And I think this is what I have heard in circles is part of the problem. You may find that institutions and organizations are open to doing things differently, but very few of them know what different looks like. And so these cases that colleagues have shared as part of this webinar are very powerful because they present in real ways and in tangible ways what alternative ways of working with communities like. And so that's what I've embraced. Then to say that 2 months ago, I left full-time. And part of the reason I left full-time employment was that in as much as you can engage in institutions often have their own identity. And institutional identity can also be a constraint. I think you must be neurodivergent. So you can be neurodivergent as an individual, need your institution to also be neurodivergent in order to test things and then embrace things. So part of my work now is about supporting and working with small.
You there?
And I think that it aligns with how ABCD works and presents itself in communities. The quote is as follows: change is rarely straightforward. Sometimes it's as complex as chaos theory and as slow as evolution. Even things that seem to happen suddenly arise from deep roots in the past or from long dormant seeds. And I think that quote for me is powerful because the work that we are beset with as ABCD enthusiasts and supporters and practitioners is really to plant seeds to the point where I think the results that Amelia, Conrad, and Bernie are speaking to start to manifest. So I think those are the remarks I wanted to make, Janine, before I get to the big surprise.
Thank you. I love that quote. I love it. So over to you for the big surprise.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So friends and colleagues, in this segment, I'm really going to be speaking about what we are bringing to you as a new offering that is being birthed and that's taking shape in South Africa and in Africa. And it's called the ABCD Africa Association. This association draws very strongly from the ABCD anchor of community, as has been discussed in this webinar so far. And it also, I think, is echoed in the quote that Simon Sinek says about community. Jessica, can you go to that second slide, please? Excellent. Thank you so much. So as someone, the next says here, a community is a group of people who agree to go together. So this association is meant to embody that in real ways, not just for the present, but also for the future. Then, colleagues, to say to you and to share with you that this association has been birthed by a very small group of people, and 5 of those people are in this conversation. Jessica, can you go to the second slide, to the next slide, please? So this is the small group that began this conversation around a collective of sort that would work as a holder of ABCD intelligence, of ABCD knowledge, of ABCD practice, not just for the use of the current practitioners, but also for use by future generations who too will plug themselves onto the ABCD bus. And this community is made up of 6 members. And as I've said, 5 of these members are in this webinar, and you've heard from all of us. We have one gentleman in the collective. He's currently not here because since the May elections or post the May elections, he was sworn in as a member of parliament. So it's been very difficult to get him, I think, to continue his participation as part of this collective. But the thinking of this collective was to make this offering for the broader ABCD community to co-build with us, to co-create with us, to utilize the association for its benefit, to feed the association so that it becomes what all of us desire it to be, but also through the association, to create the needed value, not just for the practitioner community, but also, and maybe importantly, for the work that takes place in the field. And as you know, the 6 people on that slide are practitioners, are enthusiasts, and are also supporters of the ABCD as a way of life and as an important approach, I think, to bring into mainstream. Next slide, Jessica. So what this group then did was to think about, I think, the key objectives of bringing this offering to the table. And so on this slide are the objectives, and I'm going to go through them because I think they're very important. So the main objective is to establish a network of ABCD researchers and practitioners in Africa for the purpose of building a body of knowledge and evidence for ABCD approaches to development, for advocating for ABCD approaches and programs with key stakeholders, developing resources and supporting communities of practice to advance ABCD programming. And the last one is forming partnerships, alliances, collaborations with aligned networks, movements, association donors, higher education institutions, research institutes, and government to advance citizen-led and appreciative approaches to community development. And getting to these objectives took some time. Our conversations were really robust, and we were very clear that we need the objectives to be focused, to be clear, and I think to align with what all of us as individuals and as a collective are pursuing as ABCD practitioners. To the next slide, Jessica. Then this slide speaks to really the base definition that we are drawing from. And I think for me, the concept I'd like to zoom in on here is ultimately this association is intent on, I think, amplifying what citizen-led looks like, and this is a term that came up, I think, in your presentation, Conrad, and also Hannah's, around reminding communities, reminding ourselves of the power that lies and sits with us, of our own agency, that we are not victims, but victors, and we really do have the power in our hands. So through this association, that is I think the goal that we want to pursue, and the definition that's what we want to advance. The next slide, please. So what actions have been taken thus far? I talked about the birthing process, and as you'll know, a birthing process needs time, and this one has been no different. So I think 3 actions have been taken. A lot of actions have been taken so far. I think 2 big ones, and then a last one for the end of the year. So at the start of this year, and I think for a period of about 4 to 6 months, what we've done is really, as this small committee, is to be in conversation with each other, to have robust discussions and to debate, around what this offering could look like, and to make some initial decisions. And so those discussions led us to a draft constitution, which is already in place, as well as some discussions and some initial agreements as to the modalities of working of this association. Then I think once we got to a point where the constitution was in place and the modalities were already outlined, we took a decision that we needed to take this to the broader ABCD community so that we can test the concept. And this led us to having 3 virtual consultative sessions. Those were well attended. And those took place in August and September. I think it was 2 in August and then 1 in September, or vice versa. I can't remember, Janine. But from those conversations, we got a lot of, I think we got support. I must start off with a positive. we got support. I think there was excitement. I remember the one comment made was that this is also for future generations of ABCD practitioners, because many of us, we have different experiences of how we got onto the ABCD bus. But it would be wonderful to have an association of this nature in place for newcomers, I think, to tap into and to plug into. So we got support, but we also got, I think, important input and suggestions of things to consider further as we continue the building process. Then post those engagements, where we've landed is that before the end of this year, we must launch the association again, which was supported in the conversations we had with the broader ABCD community, that we must launch before the end of the year and activate the membership. And I think for us as the initial committee, this is important because we felt that enough talking had been done in 2024, and we really now must get to activating this association and testing the concept in real time to see what it can offer the community. So that's where we're at. We're looking to launch either end of November or December, the association. And then the next slide, Jessica. Yeah, that's it. We are not boring you with the nitty-gritties of what has come up in conversations, but I think you've gotten the gist of what has been conceptualized and what we plan to do with it. And as Janine had mentioned, we are hopeful that all of you will also plug into this association so that we can also tap into your insights in making this a possibility. Thank you so much. And then, of course, we'll take questions if there are any at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Wonderful. So yes, this is the culmination of a lot of months of hard work and conversations and cups of coffee, but we are delighted to be able to be offering this with you. And as Judith mentioned, we're not going through all the nitty-gritty details right now, but we will keep you posted, and we hope that many of you might be interested in joining us. One other thing that I just want to quickly mention before we take some questions or comments is that some of us are involved, Amelia and myself and Hannah are involved in an ABCD training offering, which is going to be online next year in February and March. And perhaps Jessica can put the link for us in the chat. That is going to be hosted by the ABCD Institute of Chicago. They are enabling us to be able to offer an Africa-based training, because up to now the other training that they've been doing is very much North America based. So we are delighted to be able to be offering this one, and the link is there, and hopefully some of you might be interested in joining that if you want to learn more about ABCD. But for now, let us just open up. We've got about 10 minutes left. Any questions, any comments to any of the panelists or in relation to the association? The floor is open.
May I just go ahead and speak? I have my hand up, but I'm not
Yes.
sure I can see it.
Bidemi, yes, I can see it now. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, to everybody. Thanks so much. I'm very new to the ABCD, although I think it's the concept that's been in my mind for a very long time, and it makes a lot of sense. And I was introduced to this by a colleague who we're trying to work with. I'm just curious about the association because, I feel like I want to jump in and be a member, but just curious, what you would expect from us as members and how it works, really. Just a quick snapshot. Thank you.
I think in true ABCD fashion, we are probably sort of co-creating as we go along, and that is the way that we do things. So the idea was just that we feel like we are working in silos, and we are conscious of the fact that more and more people are getting interested in ABCD. I get phone calls from people saying, we want to do this in this particular town. Do you know someone close by who could help us with training? And so we just feel like we need to get a kind of a family together where we can have like a database of who's doing what where and who's available to help with certain things, for instance, and also just to have a platform to share, because I think when we get together like this and share our various experiences and projects and so on, we all just get encouraged, and we all just encourage each other. And I see John saying, it's nice to see the passion that we have in this approach. And I think when we do get together, we just get each other so excited because we realize the power of this approach. And so I think that basically is the overall idea behind the association, is just to have a shared platform where we can share resources, ideas, success stories, challenges, and just be a family there for each other. So I hope that helps you, Bidemi, and I hope that you do join us.
And you need to be infectious. You need to get the word out there, and don't keep it for yourself. People need to know there's a lot of love in the world, and we can really work together. That's what it's about.
This is the new pandemic.
Yes, and then also, Janine, I think also when you are a member, we are going to do training as well, and there's discounted rates to members. So there's some very exciting type of benefits to join and be part of that. So
thank you. Thanks, Amelia.
Wait for the information. We will send some updated information to all of you.
Okay, thank you. Ritu.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm just so happy, and I send you all big hugs.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. We'll accept it.
Yeah. Why, like others were not associated with strength-based approaches, like why strength-based approach and why not deficit-based approach? Because deficit-based approach makes you think, okay, I know everything, I'm the expert, and I'm going to tell them. So aren't we exercising our own power over others? And what is also, and I worked in Asia, Africa, and Europe. And then this kind of mindset of telling people and providing them, it reinforces the sense of dependency and hopelessness in people, that nothing can be done. And especially in today's times when we are running out of resources, we're losing hope. I think this kind of approach is what the world needs. But it's been so hard because I also facilitate a similar approach, and people, those who love providing services and are constantly challenging the system, we are not saying that there is no role of the government or the system, but please step in when we cannot do. What we cannot do, what communities cannot do, then step in. Please don't start from what we need, like the need-based approach. So I think it needs more advocacy. And I am fully with you, and I wish you all the success, because your success is our success.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ritu.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And
Wow,
I think
thank
to your point as well, the whole thing is that although ABCD has, as that term was developed by the Institute in Chicago with John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann, to me, that's not where ABCD started. To me, ABCD is in all of us. if you think about how we live our lives, that's how we work. And Sadi talks about letsema, which is the Sesotho concept of using what you have and working with what we've all done. That we all do that just as part of our human DNA. So I think, yes, the ABCD concept was named and termed that, and it's been promoted as that since the 80s. But to me, it is actually part of us just as human beings. But we've been duped, I suppose you could say, by the other needs-based development approaches, which have made us feel so important that we are the experts, we have the answers, we need to go in and rescue people. So yeah, Jim, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you for the presentations, and we have some expressions of ABCD in the UK. However, what I find interesting, we also in the UK presently have what are called Poverty Truth Commissions. And it's my understanding of history is that we actually learned that from South Africa.
Really?
So in some senses, one of the concerns of ABCD and John McKnight is to whether it's sharp enough politically. I think that's a concern here. And in a sense, one of the aspects of the Poverty Truth Commissions is that literally, in a day-to-day way, people in local communities are sitting down round the table, with the power people, really, and that's what we learn. So I just find it interesting that connection hasn't been made, because we learned it from yourselves. But in a sense, a concern I might have is that McKnight and company, have taken a little of the politics out of it.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that either. Yeah.
Me neither.
Conrad, I don't know if you have, Conrad.
No, I haven't, but it comes from, remember, with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there were these community conversations that were held, and it dealt with, those deep-seated inequalities in communities that have experienced. Okay. So, yeah, and the UK probably then extracted lessons from that. But I think we need to look into that. Thank you.
Please, Jim.
Thanks.
Yeah. We would like to.
Was there another hand that I saw? I can't see it now.
Yes, I have my hand up, Sadi.
Yes, go for it. Sadi.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. This is so much appreciated, the work that has been done so far. I actually salute you guys. Yeah, and I'm on board. I'm on board now. But I want to
You've always been, Sadi.
Yeah, no, I've been, I've not been well for some time, so that's why I've been so quiet. But I've recovered now. But I wanted to latch on what Jim just said with regard to the poverty, Truth Commission, something like that. that we really owe our people that, because post 1994, I mean pre-1994 years, there were challenges of apartheid, but that passion of self-help was always there. And that was killed by the domination of the need-based approach, which actually has killed that self-help mentality, and people are now just waiting. So we really owe our people that Poverty, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, whatever that you want to call it, so that and that can be done only through emphasis I've just run out of words, but that ABCD spirit is the one that, and I think our government can actually do justice to that by reviewing policies, because we've got policies that and programs that in some instances the language is correct, but when it comes to the implementation, it's a different ballgame altogether. So we can actually do that justice by engaging with government policy development and programs that are shifting away from this need-based focus towards an asset strength-based focus, where people can begin to appreciate who they are and the strengths that they have to can change their situation. So that, Jim, you've just triggered something in my mind that says, really, we owe our people that, we have killed that spirit of people doing things for themselves to saying, just sit back and wait and look at where we are now. Look at where we are. It is not easy to change people's mindsets. It is not easy. Starting with yourself as an individual, because you've got to believe in it, you've got to dream it and do it and be part of it. But with most of our government officials, except for Conrad is, he's that crazy guy in government who is
and the other colleagues here also, sorry.
and all the other colleagues, Michael and the rest.
I see Mike's there, Pulu.
Yeah, but there are those a few crazy Msebenzis that have embraced the ABCD, that goes out there to work with communities, not to go and deliver, but to make sure that we change that mindset that government can do everything. Government is there to support, but not to be a wholesale provider of everything. And if communities invest in their own development, they actually will own it rather than where everything is done for them and there's no sense of ownership whatsoever. Thank you.
Amen, sister. Johanna, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and greetings from Bloemfontein. It's a bit hot today. Thanks for the wonderful presentations. We've really learned a lot. But what I want to add to some of the things that maybe we need to pay attention to is the terminologies that we use that actually make people to feel that, they are useless, they don't have anything, they must be beggars. Terms like the vulnerable, the indigent, I think when we move forward, we also need to look at these terminologies because they can affect the mindset, even if we want to change the mindset.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Johanna. Thank you. I'm conscious of the time, and we usually try and keep our webinars to 90 minutes. So unless there are any burning questions, I would like to hand back to Daniel. Conrad, one last question or comment.
Yeah, and this is a burning comment, because I know we've always been talking about where government is lacking or even where communities are lacking. I think, and Johanna also spoke about the terms we use. It's not about lacking or where government lacking or where communities lacking. It's about how we forge those partnerships. So government doesn't, communities are not doing it because of the failure of government, or government isn't doing it because of the failure of communities. There's always something happening, and that mind frame we must push that mind frame through. Because different countries will have different experiences. There's always government, and there's always something that they have to deliver. There's always community, and they always leverage on these services to stretch their own development impact. So so that's the first change of language, Johanna. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, important. Thank you. Judith, last one.
I want to ride on Conrad's back and say that I think my addition is that I think the other framing component is that ABCD is not just for situations, for contexts where government may not be working. It's also for contexts where government does work. Because I think the call for agency and the call for active citizenry remains a worthy pursuit, regardless of, I think, the political contexts in our communities. So I think that's another framing thing, because otherwise we may fall into the trap where people associate it with difficult and challenging environments as opposed to all environments. Thanks, colleagues.
Yeah. Thank you. So I would just like to say thank you to all my panelists, to my friends, to my dear ABCD colleagues. Thank you. This has been very exciting for us all, and we will definitely be looking back at the recording, and thank everybody for your amazing participation. And Daniel, would you like to close us off?
Thank you, Janine, and thank you for the panelists for taking us through this exciting moment. Normally we would work with 1.5 hours, but This is a topic that possibly, because of the passion, time just flies rather too fast. And the good thing is that now there is an invitation that we come together, and even this new umbrella that has come up, where again now we can have another forum to come together, sharpen each other, and see how we promote the whole process of leveraging on our agency and citizenship and our voices to make transformations in our communities. So thank you so much for taking us this far. This is the end of the 42nd edition of this webinar series. We are now going into the 43rd edition in November 13th. And then the last edition for this year is an open forum in December 11th, where we come together, just reflect on what has happened through the year, and then also vision what happens in the coming year. And so you are welcome to these forthcoming sessions. As you have noticed, Janine and team are calling for membership in the ABCD Africa. We're also calling for membership in IACD, and the more the better, so that we have as many vehicles which bring us together and put us together on the journey of connecting and becoming much more stronger as the community development practitioners. Let me invite John Conwell, who will be presenting in the 43rd edition in November, just to give us a snapshot and invite us to that session. Over to you, John. We are conscious of time. We don't take long.
Sure. It won't take long. Thanks, Daniel, and thanks everybody for such a wonderful session today. It was great listening to so many good things happening. So just very briefly, the next one, 13th of November, it's going to be focused on community development with young people, and we've got several different people presenting some of their experiences working on sexual health and rights with young people. So we've got projects in Kenya and in Ghana, and hopefully other people will come and share some of their experiences. We'll be doing a few different things during that session. So hope to see many of you then. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much. And until November 13th, all the best.